KHTS.com.
Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now.
Welcome to Families in Action on our hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm Cary Quashen, your host. I have a co-host, Bob Sheriff, which is sitting right next to me. Bob.
Wow, Cary, happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Yeah, it is, awesome to be in another week where we can go and try to help some people. Did you have a good weekend?
I did, yes. Very nice and quiet. I kept it nice and calm this weekend.
Yeah, that's occasionally we get to do that, right?
Occasionally. not very often, but yeah, occasionally. So this weekend was kind of mellow, so it was good.
We had a...
That doesn't mean we didn't have crises that we were dealing with.
You know what? All of them, for me, at our site over there, hit on Friday. Friday at 5 o'clock, I had 6 people show up and coming in, you know what I mean, all at one time. So I like that. I mean, it's kind of hectic on the staff, but it's really cool is because... if you look at the statistics, the people who need treatment out there that are not able to access treatment or won't do it or whatever is such a huge number of people. So anybody who gets access to treatment is awesome. Bring them in the door. So
I was talking to somebody on the way here. It's exactly what you're saying. There's a million people out there that need it, and they're never going to get it. Yeah,
the last statistic I saw,
they got to want it.
The last statistic that I saw was 0.8% of the people who have been identified as having drug and alcohol issues actually ever receive treatment. Less than 1%.
Is that crazy?
That's nuts, right?
Yeah.
So it's always good when we get a flood of people, even if it's on a Friday when it's time to go home.
5 o'clock. Yeah, because Yeah, because you know what? In reality, and I was talking about this today at the hospital. We're saving lives. Because
Absolutely.
How many of these people might not survive if they weren't getting treatment?
Right. Well, I mean, we could sit here all day long and talk about the numbers, but it is, I think drug addiction and alcoholism, especially if you include nicotine, which of course we should, a lot of people don't get that piece of it, is the #1 killer in the world.
Of course.
More than anything else. So if we can help even one person, it's a big deal.
Even though we're greedy. We don't want to help one. We want to help lots.
That's right. In
fact, we're in business to put ourselves out of business, but unfortunately, I don't know that will ever happen.
Well, no, not. I mean, not unless there's some dramatic changes in terms of attitudes about drugs and alcohol, across the board. Unfortunately, a lot of the sort of fight that we have is with the with the attitudes about it. People just don't think it's that big of a deal, even though the numbers are out there, right?
Which is kind of crazy because I don't know anybody who doesn't know somebody affected by alcohol or drugs.
Right.
I don't know anybody who doesn't know somebody.
Yep. Well, we do. I know you asked this question too, but you and I do presentations at schools, and we're going to the younger kids, and I'll ask them that same question: is how many people know somebody who's been affected by drugs or alcohol in a negative way? Right. Every hand in the classroom goes up, but how many of you?
We're talking junior high and elementary school kids.
Young. And then I will ask the question, I know you do too, right, is how many of you are talking about it on a regular basis at home? And maybe 1 or 2 hands might go up. That's a thing that needs to change early on for us to get a real picture of what drugs and alcohol are. We're going to talk a lot about, what the intervention, treatment, and relapse prevention process looks like today in terms of those who do get help. But before we do that, I want to remind everyone that Families in Action is brought to you on your hometown station, AM 1220. We've been on the air. This is our 12th year on the air, and we very much appreciate them. Families in Action is also brought to you by Action Family Counseling. Action Family Counseling is rehabilitation centers for both adolescents and adults. We serve a population of 12 years old and up in separate facilities. We have residential and intensive outpatient programs. And Families in Action is also brought to you by the nonprofit Action Family Foundation, who brings us the Action Parent Teen Support Program every Tuesday night at Canyon High School at 7 p.m. and it is open to the public, so anyone is welcome. In fact, everyone is welcome.
Everyone is welcome.
especially those with teenagers, but anybody who's got kids or even those who would like to see what's going on in our community, please stop by Canyon High School, 7 p.m. in the AA building every Tuesday night. And Cary Quashen will be there if you'd like to come over and say hi to him. He's there. You've been there every Tuesday for how many years now? A long time.
Go there.
Long time. Yeah, so when we come back after this break, we will get into our show. This is Families in Action, brought to you on our hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS.
Welcome back to Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS. I'm Cary Quashen along with Bob Shares. And you know, it's Alcohol Awareness Month, right?
It is.
So we've done all kinds of different stuff about alcohol, and we did the statistics and we did all this stuff. But now I think we want to talk more about treatment and relapse prevention and all that kinds of stuff today. What do you think, Bob?
Well, it's a great idea. I mean, I get a lot of questions about, okay, maybe I have some issues, or maybe my family member has some issues, and we've been talking about treatment, or we've been looking at treatment, but we're really not sure because there's so many different choices out there. There's so many different options. We don't know exactly what that is. So I think it would be helpful for us to help navigate, that process for those that are listening and what that looks like.
So and there's different kinds of reasons for people to go to treatment too. I mean, there's the guy that wakes up, or girl that wakes up and goes, "My God, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
I need to do something different."
Like a moment of clarity, right?
And people have those.
Of course.
We get them. Yeah. But the majority of people that actually we get called from, it's not quite like that.
No, and especially when you're dealing with kids. I mean, adolescents and adults are two different stories, but especially with the kids,
But
right?
even the adults we're dealing with, they're adolescents. I hate to say it. I mean, they act like adolescents because, we deal with all ages, but a huge population is 18 to 25.
Right.
And they haven't quite emotionally grown because they've been using alcohol and drugs for so long. So they come to us from a lot of different places. A lot of times people will, like you said, wake up to have a moment of clarity. Bang, I need to do something right now. Sure. And they're willing to do it, which means treatment for them might be different.
What are some of the other interventions that might take place?
Oh, lots. I mean,
police intervention, maybe?
Police intervention.
Right.
Work intervention.
Okay.
Family intervention.
Right.
There's so many different...
Car intervention. Medical intervention.
An overdose.
Right, yeah.
Exactly. Even though, and you could speak with me on this. We've been to the bedside of many people that were overdosed, that have tubes in every hole in their body, tubes where there isn't holes, and on the deathbed. And when it comes to, no, I don't need any help.
Well, that always amazes me.
When I leave here, I'll just use less.
Well, I get it. The idea is this. Many of the people we visit in the hospital, the idea is this. Surely, after this experience right here, that's enough for me to not ever do it again, right? And
they, by the way, they do mean it when they say it.
They mean it 100%, absolutely. But what many people don't understand is that the process of addiction that goes on in the brain is so much more powerful than the idea that I need to stop this. And if somebody doesn't have the treatment to change that mentality, then that idea of, I'm afraid to do it again, or this, I'm so scared, whatever, it goes out the window. And sometimes the next day.
Just like we have pending 6 adolescents right now coming into a rehab. They've been pending for a month.
Because they're not sure?
Because the parents aren't sure.
Right.
Because what happens is the kid disappears for 3 weeks.
Okay.
Everybody's panicked. They call us every day, please have a bed. And then the kid shows up, says, Mom, Dad, I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again. And when we call them up, say we have a bed or whatever the deal is, they go, well, he's been great.
We're going to give him a chance. That's right. We're going to give him a chance to do it on his own or something, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's so many different obstacles when it comes to dealing with it. It's for the family member to pull the trigger. Or it's for the alcoholic or addict to pull the trigger. And nobody wants to, the alcoholic and addict, they don't want to blame the alcohol or drugs. They will blame everything and everybody else. It's my school's fault. If you had a dad like mine, you used too.
Right.
If
my circumstances were different, then I'd be able to maybe manage it and not let it get out of control or something.
Exactly.
Right?
But why is it that they can't blame the real culprit? It's the world's fault. The real culprit is the alcohol or drugs.
Well, and that's part of the addiction process right there, is in many, many ways, the drugs and alcohol hijack the brain, and they make the decision. You know, the drugs and alcohol make the decisions for a person. And the scary part about it is somebody who's addicted doesn't even know that that's happening oftentimes.
Right.
They, you know, the idea that that I could do it if I had different circumstances in my life actually makes sense to the person. Or it's all your fault, or if I didn't have this going on, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, and the reality is you can't blame alcohol or drugs. Because if you really if you really look at it and you say, that's the reason, what does that mean?
That means you gotta take a look at the alcohol and drugs and stop.
That means you got to pay attention to the problem, and the problem is not everybody else. It's not the world. It's the alcohol and drugs.
Right.
Meaning now we have to figure a way to stop.
Well,
and that's frightening as heck to somebody that's been drinking
is.
or using for any period of time.
Especially when, you know, to stop using drugs and alcohol, and this is going to sound a little contradictory because we just said that drugs and alcohol are the problem, but when you take the drugs and the alcohol away, then it allows a person to start looking at the underlying issues that they're masking with the drugs and alcohol anyway. So when you get down to it, alcohol and drugs are creating a lot of problems in life, but they're really just like a cover-up for what's really going on. But we can't begin to look at those underlying issues until we help a person get abstinent.
Here's what happens. Let's say little Johnny. We'll pick a kid, for instance, okay?
It's always Johnny.
It's an easy name. Little Johnny, there's all kinds of issues. Parents find out he's using drugs and he's drinking, and they panic. So what do? They go to a great therapist.
Right.
Great therapist says, okay, now he only going to see this therapist for an hour.
Once a week, maybe.
Once a week. Now, he's been using drugs every day with his friends.
Right.
Everyone he knows is using drugs. So he goes to a therapist and he tells the therapist, yeah, I have other problems. The pot makes me feel better. I can focus better. I'm not as depressed. And the therapist says, well, maybe you ought to see a psychiatrist. Sends him to a great psychiatrist, which is now going to put him on some kind of meds for depression. So now he's seeing a therapist once a week for an hour. He's seeing a psychiatrist once a month for medication management.
Right.
But he's still using drugs. So what's going to happen now with the ability for those medications to work?
Or that therapy to work. It doesn't make the therapist not a great therapist, and it doesn't make the doctor not a great doctor. What it means is that the efficacy of those treatments, the effectiveness is what that means. The effectiveness of those treatments is going to be far less, if any at all, because you're changing the whole thing by continuing the drug use.
You know, the therapy and the psychiatry and the medication, all that's great, but you got to take the drugs away first. Hey, guess what time it is?
This is Families in Action, brought to you on your hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS.